Hello, this is Don Victor, author of Drawn to Win, host of the podcast Drawn to Win, the director of the Academy of Composition, and the creator of the Core 80 Experience, also known as the See and Grow Rich in Art video course, which you can find out more information at core80.com. This is the Drawn to Win podcast, where I have the incredible privilege to draw artists from around the world into fun and meaningful conversations around art and life, and yes, maybe even a little food. You can hear us each week on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and YouTube. So make sure you subscribe so you always have a seat among friends. Let's get into the show. Hello, Michael. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Indeed. Now, I like your accent. Where are you from?
Well, I'm from Ireland, originally from southwest of Ireland, County Kerry. Spent a lot of my time living in Dublin, and now I live in the southeast of Ireland in Wexford.
Wexford. So outside of Ireland, have you lived anywhere else or been anywhere else?
Not lived, but I've traveled quite a lot. I used to have a job that paid better than art, and I did a lot of foreign travel in my job.
Yeah,
I've been to the States quite a lot, East Coast, West Coast, but I've also done a lot of travel around Europe, Australia, Asia. I've been around.
What's one of your favorite places?
I loved the west coast of California. I did a couple of workshops out there, actually. We may come back to that, but I did a couple of workshops back in, I think around 2000, 2001. And I've been back. My wife and I did a vacation there, I think, around 2003. And we did the Highway 1 drive. We spent some time in Santa Barbara, and then we drove up along the coast for a week and finished up in San Francisco. So it was good. I enjoyed it.
Wow.
A bit like the west of Ireland, but with sunshine.
I was gonna say, it does have a lot of that same almost feel, like we have the ocean and the big landscape there. It's kind of strange for me to hear people talk about the U.S. as a place that you went to and traveled, and I'm sure it's strange when people are like, "Oh yeah, I went to Dublin for like 2 weeks and traveled up the East Coast or the coast or what." So, Michael, what are you currently working on in your studio?
I've got a mix of stuff. This year we had I would normally be doing plein air painting from into February on, but we had a terrible winter here, and it went on and on and on. And usually when we get into March here, the spring starts, and things start growing and it looks nice, and the days get a bit longer. But we got dumped 2 foot of snow on us around mid-March, and it was incredible, worst snow we've had in about 50 years.
Wow.
So
wow.
I just got out for the first time this weekend to do some plein air painting. I tend to do some work on them in the studio afterwards. If I see something needs a little bit of work, or something that that's worth working on again. So I did some daffodils out in the back garden on Saturday, and they're a difficult thing to paint, So I've spent most of today actually working on the daffodil painting that I got a good start on outside, on plein air. But other than that, I went out on Sunday with a few friends down to a place called Hookhead. It's got a lighthouse, and it's on the coast, obviously. Rough, kind of wild place with cliffs, but very popular for kind of Sunday walkers and strollers and painters. So we got a really nice day. We got one of those those fantastic days for painting the ocean where the sun was shining and there was still a good bit of action in the water, big breakers coming in. A little bit windy. That was the only problem. A little
Mm.
bit too. So I did a small little plein air painting and I finished that actually yesterday in studio. Spent about an hour or two on it again. And other than that, I have a portrait that I almost finished from life last Thursday. Just we do a weekly portrait thing here, a few of us.
Mm-hmm.
And, that needs a little bit of work. It's worth doing. So there's always something.
Indeed.
No major project at the moment. I tend to do some large landscapes in the studio over the winter months, but whatever I've done, it's done now. So I'm back into sort of hopefully plein air work for a few months.
When you say large, what's the size?
Okay, well, I suppose it's all relative. It's for plein air work usually they're pretty small. It's the wind is the problem with plein air here in Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
So I rarely work any larger than about 14 by 18 inches.
Okay.
I'm outside and I usually work on a panel rather than a canvas.
Mm-hmm.
I would do stuff up to, maybe 40 inches by 30, something like that.
Okay.
So they'd be a good size painting, but not. Some people would consider that small.
Well, that sounds like like maybe a large, medium-sized painting.
Well, they'd be more considered. I could spend 100 hours on something like that. Over a period of weeks. Just come back to it and build it up, leave it dry in some places just to get certain effects. But I find it's a very, very different thing to working outdoors. For me, working outdoors is a completely different experience because you respond to, I think, what's around you more. Like the example, like yesterday in Hookhead, because it was windy and big crashing waves coming in, you find yourself kind of putting the paint on more impasto and just more vigorous brushwork, and it's not even conscious. It's just sort of the way you're influenced by what's around you.
Sure.
And I think in the studio it's a very different experience because obviously it's nice and warm. And you can have a coffee if you want. You can have a break, go away, have to think about it.
Yeah,
so it's a more considered sort of, I suppose, terrible experience. Whereas the plein air stuff is largely kind of intuitive and go for it.
Indeed. Yeah, I like the contrast of those two ideas, which I'm looking forward to hearing more contrasts or juxtapositions that you bring up, because when looking through your work, I see that you're like really, really good at having these wonderful juxtapositions or differences, and
you mean like in tonal contrast?
Yeah, it might be texture, it might be color, it might be, but I think part of the magic of your work is really looking for, and usually you don't have to look very hard because it's just there, but there's usually like this play, this protagonist, antagonist type of energy where there's a yin and a yang, there's, if there's something cool and smooth, oftentimes you'll have something that's warm and rough, right? Just to paint that picture. And I don't know if you do that with intention, or if it's something that just kind of intuitively happens, but looking over your work, it's one of the key patterns that consistently occurs.
I would say it's largely intuitive, probably. At this stage, I certainly I have no formal art education, by the way. I am very well read, and I'm one of those people who likes to study on their own. So I would have a lot of knowledge about composition and what works and what doesn't. But I think just the experience of working outside and working not just outside, but working from life, whether it be portraiture, figurative, or landscape outside. I think you get an eye for what works,
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, definitely, I would be conscious, I suppose, at one level of keeping certain passages of a painting smooth, soft, very little sort of tonal contrast going on, and then other areas a little bit more impasto, more vigorous brushwork, because it's really trying to guide the viewer around the painting and draw them in to certain places or a place, maybe in some cases just one focal area. But I kind of see painting a little bit like music. You know, you gotta have some soft passages to make the chorus make the
Indeed,
chorus
indeed.
buzz. You know,
I like
and
that. I like how you said that.
it's sort of the same thing. You know, but I mean that is the way I kind of approach painting. I've learned sort of to tame it down a little bit. You know, you got to keep your punch for
Indeed.
where you want it. You know.
That's awesome. That's a really great way of putting it and looking at it. So have you now that you're a career artist, and you left your career, you said, right? Or did you retire?
I retired.
Okay, well that works.
I retired at a very young age.
Well, that sounds
I,
nice.
I no, I mean, look, I was fortunate enough, I suppose, in my life to, I was a senior manager in a large public body, government organisation for many years. So there's only two of us, my wife and I. We don't have any family, so
Mm.
we became well to do enough that I could afford to just walk and leave. And I always promised myself when I got to a certain age, I'd paint full time, you know. And I think stuff happened as well. I mean, like we all have experiences. Like my dad actually passed away suddenly in
Mm.
I would have been in my late 40s at the time. He was only 74.
Mm.
You know, I think the penny kind of dropped, buddy. Like time is running out, you know.
Yeah.
So I think it helped to focus the mind a little bit. And around that time, I actually moved from Dublin. I moved down the country. I took a lateral position within my own organisation, but it was effectively career-wise a cul-de-sac, if you understand. So
Mm-hmm.
I had intended to leave anyway. But what happened, we moved to Wexford, and then I was very fortunate here because I suppose we moved because the weather tends to be a little bit better here than elsewhere in Ireland. They call it the sunny southeast. It is relative, but it is an awful lot better than the west of Ireland. So we moved partly for that reason, long term, but also
Mm-hmm.
I was just very fortunate to find that it's quite an arty place here. There's a lot of artists and a lot of people kind of a similar mindset that are into kind of working outdoors as well. And it's been very good because there's some really good painters here, you know. And when you have that sort of peer support and kind of healthy peer pressure, it drives you, you know.
Indeed.
I think we kind of feed off each other a little bit, you know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
a little bit of healthy competition. And but it also means that when you go out to paint, there's always somebody. If you want to to be with friends, it's easy to find three or four people any day at all. You want to go painting. If you want to go on your own, nobody minds. You can do that too, you know.
Mm-hmm. That's
But
nice.
we also found down here then that there was a quite an active group of people doing figurative work, like with life drawing, and I'd never done that. So again, probably wouldn't have if I hadn't moved here. And I think that actually has helped me hugely because I would have considered myself uh, pretty much a landscape painter. You know, when I'm going back even in my 20s, I used to paint quite a bit, you know, part time. But I would have seen myself as a landscape painter, period. Like that was it, you know. And I came to realize just from doing life drawing that the first realization hit me. I suppose it would have been back around 2006, 2007. I realized that I wasn't able to draw. Certainly not as good as most of the people at the life class. And that was a kind of a tasting experience. But I mean, I realized that it was necessary. And I've spent a lot of time drawing
Mm.
purely for practice. I mean, you won't find much of it on my website because I see drawing kind of like, you know, playing scales if you're learning to play piano.
Mm-hmm.
That's or especially life drawing where you're drawing the human body in quick poses. So you're really teaching. You're learning good kind of hand-eye coordination.
Mm.
And if you do enough of it, you do it often enough. It means when you come to, certainly for me, when I come to paint something like maybe boats or something in a harbour outside, I would have struggled with something like that, as recently as 10 years ago. But I can draw stuff like that now with a paintbrush very quickly. So it's just one other thing. I mean, I've been lucky; things have just kind of fallen my way. But the decision to leave the job back in 2007 was inevitable. It was always going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So things just kind of fell my way at the right time.
All right. So you've been at it for 11 years then?
I've been painting full time, for 11 years now.
Wow. And are you driving your wife crazy yet?
I think she's got used to me. We're together a long time.
That's awesome.
We've known each other since 1985.
What? Really?
So
Wow.
we've been married since '86. So it's
wow.
So I think she knows what she's dealing with at this stage because she's used to me, But
I heard somewhere where people who get married 3 to 9, like within 3 months to a year after meeting each other, tend to stay together. And so you fall in that category, I guess.
We were about a year. We'd known each other for about a year.
Yeah. Well, they say one of the reasons why that is because a lot of times people will date for a very long time and then get together, and then 3 years later they're divorced. Is because there's an intentionality and a certainty, when you make that decision. Not that you've waited all this time and then you make a decision. You made a decision and then you stick to it. And my brother used to always say this comment that he read somewhere where it said, great leaders or something like that, they make decisions quick and they're slow to change, where other people are they're slow to make a decision, but they're quick to change it. So
I don't think we're going to change any decision at this stage anyway. I think
it's done. That's awesome. Did your wife is she into the arts with you, or is that just your thing?
No, she doesn't paint. She's dabbled a little bit in watercolor, but I don't think she'd have the sort of interest. But she's got a very good eye, I mean, we joke a little bit about it among friends, because quite often she'll say to me, even today, I was working on those daffodils, I mentioned them earlier, and I just came by at some stage and looked at it, and she said, I don't like the shape of that large daffodil at the front. And I said, well, it's a bit top heavy. I said, no, it's not. 10 minutes later, I changed it.
Exactly.
You're looking at something yourself, and this is always the problem. It's one of the reasons why I know tutors very often recommend that you turn the painting upside down if you're struggling, or use a mirror. But you can get a similar effect if you ask somebody who's familiar with your work to have a look, because they will see something that's wrong. You've been staring at it for the last 4 hours, and it suddenly starts to look normal to you. So she's good that way. I mean, she'll see little things that kind of jolt and aren't right,
Yep.
And I know her well enough at this stage. If she likes something, as in really likes it, it's going to be a good painting. Because she's going to be honest with me,
That's awesome.
And not everybody would be. I mean, you put something up on Facebook, and most people will tell you, "Fabulous, beautiful." They're really just being nice,
Yeah.
So it's
and that gets frustrating because when you put it up and you want some real feedback, especially from other artists, and they're like, "Great job, you're so talented." You're like,
Yeah, I know that. Yeah, and at least I mean, it doesn't get more honest than Helen's feedback here than me. It's, but she is good. I say she has got a good eye for looking at stuff. But I mean, she's interested. I mean, like we've travelled quite a lot, as I mentioned to you. So
Mm-hmm.
we've been lucky enough to see work. I mean, in galleries all over the world. And like Helen she'd be very interested. She'd always come along to look at stuff. So it's an interest for her, I suppose, rather than a passion.
Yeah.
I think most artists, if they're serious about it, it's kind of an obsession, really, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
If you ask most painters, and I have a lot of painter friends, if you ask them kind of why they paint, it's the usual answer eventually is I have to.
Yep.
You kind of want to do it. That's it. You can't stop. So
That's cool. So you're primarily doing landscapes and outside. Were you fascinated with that when you were young?
and yeah, you see when I started painting originally, I worked from photographs. I took photographs, west of Ireland, Connemara. It's a lovely part of the country. And I would slavishly copy the colour in the photograph because I didn't know any better.
Mm-hmm.
And what actually happened, I come to the workshops in California. I I actually was somewhere. I was in the UK on business actually, and I found myself in Nottingham. You ever heard of Nottingham
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or Robin Hood?
Yeah, yeah.
Sherwood,
And
near
they made him in.
Sherwood Forest territory. So Nottingham is not North England, kind of industrial town. Not very much to do late at night. I was there for a business meeting the following morning. I just went for a wander,
Mm-hmm.
and I found a bookshop,
Oh.
and I bought two books. One was by a UK artist called Trevor Chamberlain, who's a plein air painter. Trevor would be in his mid 80s at this stage, I'd say, but a fabulous, really, really super painter. And the other was by a Californian artist called Susan Sarbach.
Okay.
And I just, as most amateur painters, like when you bought a book, you bought it because you liked the paintings. You didn't read the text. I just bought them back to the hotel. So when I came back to Ireland, I started looking at both of them, and I suddenly realised, God, these people must be crazy. They're both painting outdoors. So I looked at Susan and realised that she was based in California. She's actually based outside Sacramento, Fair Oaks.
Hmm.
And I said, that explains it. She can paint. She's got sun all year round. And then I saw Trevor Chamberlain painting in England. A lot of his scenes were painted in the winter, in the rain. You huddle under a doorway somewhere on the street and paint. And I said, if he can do it there, I should be able to do it here. So anyway, I went to. I eventually went to California. I think it was 2001. And I went back in 2003. I did two workshops with Susan Sarbach.
Mm-hmm.
And no, Susan would have. I don't know if you've ever come across the Henry Hinchay School, Charles Hawthorne. It was sort of. It's very much based on well, it is plein air painting, but it's kind of based around some of the principles of the French Impressionists. And it's all very much about kind of putting in radiant color. And at the time, it excited my eye because I liked this thing of, compared to what I had been doing off photographs, I could suddenly get really bright colors in my paintings. But I think over the years, I've sort of come to realize that there's a lot more subtle color out there. But what it did for me, Victor, it just got me painting outside.
Mm-hmm.
I'd always be eternally grateful to Susan for that, if nothing else, because I got hooked on it. I probably would never. It's funny the way things work out. I'd say I probably would never have painted outside if I had found myself in Nottingham on a cold winter evening back around 1999, I think it was.
Wow.
Isn't it funny? Isn't it strange the way things work, So, but I think the kind of common thread for me at this stage is not just sort of painting outdoors. It's just working from life, regardless of what the subject is. I'm just intrigued by the play of light on things. It's kind of a common theme for me. It's not. Somebody asked me recently, am I a landscape painter? I don't think I am. Landscape can be it can be subject matter for me, but what really intrigues me is what sunlight does to the color of things at different times of the day, and how the eye actually sees things. And if you keep a kind of an open mind on that, like we all have sort of views, the grass is green and human flesh is pink, whatever. But of course, the light can change the color of things completely. And if you practice and you look long and hard enough, and you can see those kind of subtle color changes across things as the light shifts, it can actually excite the viewer's eye, because they suddenly get a kind of a flash of reality that wouldn't be in more traditional kind of landscape work, which would be more tonal. So I know a lot of this stuff because I've studied it. I mean, the problem for most painters is that you're when you're outside and you're in nature, you've got a huge tonal range, or value range, as you say in America. We call it tone here. Between your lightest lights and your darkest darks, like if you think of like glint on water outdoors, you have no paint that's going to match that. Of course, your darkest darks might be black outside, but they rarely are. In paint, all we have is from black to white. The tonal range in paint is much narrower. So I think historically you have people like Caravaggio who sort of went the route of maximizing the tonal range, going from black to white. And then you have people like the French Impressionists and I suppose more current painters like Susan in California who go the other way, where they want to sort of show the contrast between warm and cool. And of course, if you want to kind of maximize the warm and cool effect, you can't maximize your tonal range as well, because if you make a color too dark, you won't see what it is anymore. If that makes any sense, it probably doesn't without looking at it. But I would tend to be more of a colorist than a tonalist, in terms of my approach to painting.
So how, like, when you say colorist, what do you mean by that versus the tonalist?
There's a trade-off. At its simplest, if you think of the camera, take a photograph of something on a bright day outside, you're more than likely going to either overexpose part of it or underexpose part of it, because you're the way camera quite often on a bright day, it can make the sky white even though it's actually kind of blue. The green, the tonal contrast throws the camera. And when we look at stuff outside, what happens is we look at a scene, our brain may process a couple of hundred images in a second, because we're constantly looking around, and every time we look at something, our eye narrows, like the aperture of a camera. Our brain only sees one image. So if you try to paint that, it's not really possible to paint what you see. You gotta, it took me a long time to figure this out for myself, but you can't actually paint what you see when you're outdoors. So you have to make decisions about what's important.
Indeed.
And for me, what's important is to actually look at the color shift on things. And I'm always intrigued by how sometimes how cool areas can be, if they're under shade or under trees or something like that on a bright sunny day. And if you exaggerate those differences ever so slightly, you can really get something that pops. But if you go the other way and you maximize the tonal contrasts, you're going to finish up making your darks too dark, so they'll just look like dull grays. It is a choice. I mean, there are different schools of painting out there. I mean, there are people thinking of portraiture, for example, like what they call the Florence school, would be very much a tonal approach to painting. Very, very little color shift between light and shadow. Just almost totally a tonal or a value change. I can look at work like that and admire it, but it doesn't really do it for me. I can see the painterly skill in it. For me, I like to see color, and I like to see color change as it turns the form.
Indeed. I gotcha. Like, and you do that in your work. I'm amazed. Actually, it's interesting, the color in your work. It's unique. It's like emerald, and
Yeah,
the greens, the yellow greens that are in there that come through. It looks very surreal to me from where
yeah,
I stand. I mean, in terms of my environment. But I know, like, when I lived in the islands, um, the sky, the water, the grass was so saturated in color,
yeah,
that it was just like, it was very, very, like, I don't want to say bright, but it was bright,
yeah.
and it was very saturated. And your paintings remind me of that, and yet they don't remind me of it, because those were like a tropical environment. But
Mm.
your paintings feel like what I would think Ireland would feel like.
It
And
is pretty green. It is pretty green here.
yeah, that, I mean, I would, you know.
When it gets going, I mean, at the moment, actually, spring has been very late. And certainly we had a really bad winter here. It's only in the last few days that leaves are beginning to appear on the trees here. But when it gets going, it'll get very, very green. And you really need to be in control of that, because if I find a lot of amateur painter students I teach the odd workshop to, they tend to struggle with greens, especially,
Hmm.
because the temptation is to go garish with your greens, to really pump it in there. But of course, it's not like that. It's the reason that one part of a painting pops is because other parts are more subdued. So if you want to make leaves on a tree look like the light is really hitting, then you have to have other parts of the tree that are quite dull and dark.
Mm-hmm.
And it's painterly knowledge. I mean, you get it from. I think Claude Monet actually said once that nature was his greatest teacher, and I would subscribe to that. I think I've learned more from just being out there, than I have from a lot of the books that I've studied. And
Mm-hmm.
definitely you learn. You kind of learn from being outside what's possible and what isn't.
Yeah, there's learning, and then there's living.
Yeah,
And you might get knowledge from books, but you don't get wisdom, until you actually get out there and apply it, and realize where where what your capacity is, what you're capable of.
yeah.
And going through that experience of actually learning it legitimately, because you've put in the time and gotten intimate with it.
I think for me, what I've come to realize is that, like all of us, if whether it be painting or music or anything else, we usually excel at one thing. I've always got a pretty good eye for color. Drawing would not be my greatest asset. I don't do a lot of buildings or street scenes for that reason. Outside, I'd be a little bit slower and more considered when it comes to intricate drawing. Other people are much, much better at it than I would be. But I think what you need to do is you need to actually, somebody actually taught me this once. The best thing to do, most people actually, if they're good at something, they tend to practice what they're good at.
Mm.
What you need to do is practice what you're bad at. And the more you practice what you're bad at, you'll also get better at what you're good at. Which sounds illogical, but it is true. If you find your skills are a little bit deficient in some area, and you really practice that, it's going to be hard work, but you'll get better at it.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, which I never fully understood, you'll get better at the other stuff as well. Maybe it's because you stop struggling with the
Maybe,
area,
yeah,
you know?
because now you're fully conscious and
Yeah.
present, and there's no fear in you.
So I think what happens, I mean, just again based on my own experience, I think what's happened over the years for me is I've kind of learned. I know what I can do, and I know what I can do comfortably in a sort of a couple of hours window outside.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, So I don't have to think about it. The most common question I'm asked if at workshops is what color did you mix there? How did you get that color? And I genuinely wouldn't know, because I don't think about mixing paint. It happens intuitively.
Hmm.
That's just because I've done it so much, and but I think that's what artists need to do. Anyone that's learning, they need to almost treat it like playing a musical instrument. That if you do something often enough, you can forget the mechanical. The mechanical bit comes automatically to you, and you can then start to be more intuitive.
Yep.
And I think that's really what I'm striving to do as a painter. So I'm not quite there. I mean, I know my limitations, but I know that there's stuff I can do now that I don't have to think about anymore. It just sort of comes automatically. And when I find myself painting like that I'm not really thinking too much about it, I tend to produce my best work.
You tend to what?
I tend to produce my best work when I'm working more intuitively rather than mechanically, if you understand what I mean. It's I see. I'm kind of into this idea of left brain, right brain. That the left brain is the sort of logical brain that sort of does all the mechanical stuff, and that the right brain is more intuitive. I think what the goal really is for an artist is to try to. You need to sort of get the right part of your brain working, because that's sort of where the magic comes from. But you need to keep a balance. If you go too far in there, you're going to lose it. You could finish up with wild stuff. So there's a sort of a fine area where you need to be kind of partly logical and mechanical, but that you allow yourself that little bit of space to be more intuitive as well.
I always, years ago they had a book called "Drawing from the Right Side of the Brain."
Yeah.
And I just hated the book from the moment I heard the title. and I was like, we got a full brain. Why don't we just use the whole, and a lot of times when I'm teaching, people will say, man, like going through this process, I feel like my full brain is engaged, because there's parts of it where your right brain and parts of it where your left brain. And yeah, so I agree with you on that there needs to be a harmony between it.
I think that probably what people need to do is when you practice, I think you need to be left brain dominant, which means you're actually thinking about it, and you're trying to figure out, what am I doing, where am I going wrong, how do I get better at this. When you're really trying to produce something creative, you need to stop thinking and just let the intuitive side of your being take over, I think. And you can see that sort of analogy in a lot of things. I mean, even if you take a sportsman, you take a top golfer, they'll do all the theory and everything with their coach on the practice ground. But when they're out there, they're not thinking about, where's my club head at the back? Is it facing down, or am I parallel? They're just hitting the ball. And you could apply something similar to a musician. You take somebody like Eric Clapton playing guitar. He's not thinking of where he's going to put his finger on the fret when he's doing solo riff. It's happening intuitively. But you can bet he's put his time and effort in at home, learning his chords and everything over the years. So I think most areas, including the visual arts and painting, are a bit like that. So there's a balance to be sort of found, between that sort of creativity. And I think in some ways, maybe, I think a lot of I don't know what it's like in the States, but I think a lot of the art colleges today have kind of maybe forgotten the need to teach people how to draw and paint. Like the mechanics have been kind of forgotten about.
I would agree. It's oftentimes your education is luck, because a lot of times especially in our colleges, you'll have some teacher who can instruct, right next to one who can't, right next to one who could but chooses not to. And and then these students that go in, they pay the price, and it's by the luck of the draw somehow they got into this. I remember when I was in college, there were a couple foundation drawing classes in this one building. You come out and there was literally like the people would put their artwork up and it would look like maybe highly advanced, seventh graders,
Yeah.
like 13-year-olds.
Yeah.
And right next to them, same kids, same age kids. The only really big factor difference was the teacher. And all of a sudden they're like at this higher level, and and it was just like night and day. And
Yeah.
that I wrote back then I wrote a letter to the school because I was just like, this is wrong.
I think it's even worse here, Victor. Like what's happened here is in recent years, and I think this would be similar really across Europe, is a lot of the colleges would be of the view that skill is almost a hindrance to creativity,
And that's why they're dumb.
Well, that's what's happened, and I think a lot of talented young artists actually are being done a huge disservice because they leave college really not having learned really how to paint or draw, and they've almost been told to abandon that.
And worse, they haven't been taught to think.
Yeah,
because that's all drawing is thinking with a pencil, and so they don't know the right questions they ask. They don't know what to look for. They don't know. And
I think the internet actually and Facebook has been fantastic for people because it's really opened people's eyes. I think like I mean, all you have to do is just look at what's out there. There's so many talented, especially Chinese artists. Like it's mind-boggling what's been done. You look at some of the schools in Russia and what they're doing, how they're teaching people. It's a completely different approach to certainly what's happening in the West. Which is sort of maybe I wouldn't have a I don't know what your own views are, but I've dabbled a little bit in abstraction, small little bit, but I wouldn't have kind of firm views on it one way or the other, but I think there's an awful lot of just cool abstract.
There's a what?
There's a lot of poor abstract work out there, and it's just not good, I mean, it doesn't do anything, certainly doesn't do anything for me. I can see stuff where you can see a certain amount of thought has gone into it, and it's a nice composition. And you'll always see a painterly hand in something, even a good abstract painter. If somebody has been painting for years, you can see how the paint has been applied. But there's a lot of stuff out there that's just not good, and somebody suddenly gets a reputation because somebody famous has bought their painting, and anyway. I'm just, for me, I think what the internet has really done is just open people's eyes to the fact that, look, if you've been taught in college that everything sort of post-impressionism is what you need to look at, and forget about all this other stuff that's going on, you realize that there's a whole load of very, very talented artists out there across globally who are producing outstanding work that's not abstract, or maybe semi-abstract in some cases, but it's certainly not sort of just throwing paint at a canvas,
Indeed.
So that's my rant anyway. I have strong views really about it because I know the time and effort that's required to become half decent at painting, and I think most human beings by nature are kind of lazy. It's everyone wants to find a shortcut if they can, but there isn't any. It's time spent and invested that makes a difference. Actually, I'm thinking of I don't know. You're probably familiar with Richard Schmidt.
Yes.
Alla Prima. I love this. I think there's a line somewhere in this book around the opening chapter where he says, I think I'm paraphrasing now, that the great masters of the past, painted to the point of obsession, And he says, if you want to become good at painting, you have to realize that it's not easy and it demands huge commitment, and you have to sacrifice a lot of other things. Which is true, if you really want to be good at painting, you're going to have to put an awful lot of time into it, and it's not going to be monetary gain unless you're very, very lucky. So
unless you're very, very what?
Unless you're lucky, if you're lucky enough to be noticed by a photographer, or maybe some influential buyers start collecting your work. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're a good painter, of course. It just means that people like your work. So at the end of the day, for me anyway, I think success for me means getting to be the best painter I can be while I'm still around. I take commercial gain, and whether or not I've had reasonable success, I suppose, over the last few years, but that's not.
So how would you define, obviously you're not defining the success as being commercial success, but how would you define success then for yourself as an artist?
Well, you see, if you'd asked me 10 years ago, I probably would have said, well, I'd love to be able to go out and paint plein air paintings, and they were good enough to sell in the local gallery, and I'd be happy if I could do that. And then, of course, you get beyond that stage, and what happens is the bar just gets a little bit higher, and it shifts again. Straight answer is I don't know.
I'm sorry, what was the straight answer?
If you ask me, like, what would I consider to be success for me as a painter, I don't know, because it's a moving target. I would have had some ideas 3 years ago that would be quite different to what I have now. I think really it's got to be about just becoming the best painter that you are capable of becoming.
All right, well, let me take it in a different direction. Let's say you look at the body of work that you have, okay? And let's say 5 days from now, you're out painting, and a UFO comes along, zaps you with a beam, takes you to another planet. Yeah. So you're no longer here, okay? Right. Yeah. Which painting have you done would you want to represent you?
Of what I have on the website, I'm certainly quite proud and pleased with that painting of the church.
Okay.
I think the one. It's I call it a New Dawn. It's a studio piece based on a smaller plein air painting, and I'm pleased with it because it's it kind of involves probably a lot of what I had learned over the years. There's a strong element of drawing in it because it's got buildings, there's different angles. It's got sort of use of complementary contrast. There's a lot of variation of sort of impasto paint, and there's also sort of what happens when light comes around the solid surface, the way it sort of interacts with an edge. Like, a lot of the stuff I've learned is in that painting, it just sort of came together for me. And I sold it, which is always a good thing. But I think if I was to pick one, that's probably it.
Well, then I'd encourage you, my friend.
About a year ago.
Oh, wow. I'd encourage you then to go back, and the 4 points that you said, I think, are extremely powerful and important. And extract that and find what it was about the painting that got you, because I think you have some really pretty landscapes. I think they capture what I'll call this Irish magic, especially in the greens. I'm really fascinated by the way that you do water. I think that's just there's something really magical in that as well. But this painting that you're talking about, the New Dawn, it's so far above the other work, that it makes sense that it's sold. And I look at it and I'm just like, yeah, like it's an experience is what is going on. It's not a painting of something.
No.
And someone might look at that and say, I know exactly where that is. But 99.9999% of people don't care where it is, wouldn't recognize where it is, but they would have a tremendous positive reaction to the experience of the painting.
I think what a lot of it is, I remember that painting. When I did it originally, the original sketch I did outdoors was done with a few friends on a cold, frosty morning, probably 5 years ago. And it was what it was. It was a sort of a capture of a moment on a cold, frosty morning. But the reason I painted it is I had an idea in my head, and I'm not a particularly spiritual person, but I had an idea in my head that I could actually paint something with a bit more feeling, and it would have appealed to people as well, because there was something about that particular scene that just kind of caught my eye. I like the idea that the light kind of shining through the back of the church. So I actually elongated the spire in the large painting deliberately. It's stretched vertically a little bit deliberately. So a lot of the painting decisions I made in the studio were really based on kind of, I suppose, feeling or intuition, just to get a particular emotion into the painting. Maybe it's like a progression for me, because somebody said to me once, in fact, it was an American artist, Ned Mueller. I don't know if you've come across Ned or not. Ned is a plein air painter. He'd be in his late 70s now, but he's Ned was just a very, very knowledgeable guy. Like, he just said, talking about the stages of development of an artist, he was talking about, first of all, you're painting kind of very mechanically, and you have to really think about what you're doing all the time, and then that starts to get more intuitive, and you begin to paint sort of without having to think about it. And the kind of final stages, you start to paint with feeling and emotion. And that's when most people produce their best work. But that can take a lifetime. So
to feel the emotion?
Yeah. To actually be able to paint with feeling and emotion in what you're doing, that you're from the heart, rather than painting to appeal to a particular market or something.
Sure.
So maybe that's the only really good painting I'll ever do. Who knows? But I take positivity from the fact that I was able to do something like that. And I guess down the road, I'm not. I'm in my early 60s now, and I'm actually 62 this year.
You're still a young whippersnapper.
Relatively young, but a little bit of arthritis in the knees and the toes and stuff. So traipsing around cliff tops in South Wexford is not something I'm going to be able to do kind of indefinitely. So I think I can see myself doing a bit more studio work,
Well, honestly, like I think if you go deeper and extract what's winning inside that painting, when it comes to the plein air, I encourage a lot of people to go and enjoy their plein air, and then use it as a really great study to do a studio piece. And I know for a lot of plein air people, that's some of them say that that's what they do, but I also know that's a struggle. That encouragement is a struggle, because so many artists don't design their work, so they don't even know really where to start with it. They just know, oh, okay, I have an idea. Let me start fleshing it out on a canvas with some paint, draw it with a paint, and then I'll just get into the painting. And but the success that's in that piece right there is replicable. Like, you could do that consistently over and over and over again. and I see it so clear. I mean, what's making it work? You articulated 4 extremely great points on it, which is basically what I would say too. But to get that, you would not need to have to go out and be in a special place, and experience it
Yeah,
live.
I don't know. I think I agree with you up to a point, but I don't think I could have produced a painting like that without all the work I've done outside over the last 10 years.
Well, that's true because
You
you're learning your
Yeah,
subject, right? So yeah, I mean you're spending time with it, so that would make so I would agree with you.
kind of see
Uh,
what light does to things when it travels around surfaces and that. It's the more you observe, the more you can remember,
Absolutely.
and you can use that knowledge then in the studio
Yep.
to create something that looks sort of real, and yet there's aspects of reality to it. There's aspects that aren't, that are a little bit
Yep.
more surreal or whatever, but you can make it look real enough to somebody that it draws them in.
Well, it's strange. Like when I look at this painting, I don't see it as being real. Like it's very uh it's very magical.
Yeah,
Now, it's real in the sense that there's no dragons flying around or leprechauns running through the through the grass, like
it's going to be a
it,
few out there, yeah.
yeah, like it's not fantasy
Yeah, yeah.
in that sense. And the buildings are buildings, and the posts with the wires on, or posts with the wires on. um but especially in the way that you're using color, it brings in this very magical moment, and maybe it's actually real in Ireland that way. um but even though you have this beautiful, hot, warm sky, and it contrasts, high point of contrast is right at the top of that steeple of that church, and then as it descends, I love the pinks and the oranges that are formed in there, and then it transitions into these blues, maybe blue greens, and
Okay.
and it's just these constant little subtleties of light and dark and warm and cool, and it's quite beautiful. It really is, like you said earlier, like music. Um,
There's just enough. I mean, I'm not looking at the painting, but I'm so familiar with it. There's just enough going on, kind of in the subtle, the lower half of that painting is, you can look at it and say there's very little in there, but then you see there are little slight subtle shifts of tone that bring little things out, but it's very, very subtle. There's just enough going on to kind of keep the eye there for a while, but
well,
it would have been all too easy to make that area too busy,
yep,
and
yep.
then it would have just distracted from the rest. There's a very fine balance. I mean, I remember talking to a really, really accomplished landscape painter once, and yeah, I mean, we had an interesting discussion because this was somebody who would, have national recognition here. And he said to me, look, he said, the reality is, he said, is that most of us don't really know why we produce a really good painting sometimes.
Hmm.
Because he said, if you think about it, he said, if you go to an art exhibition, a solo show by a well-known artist, usually there's about 10% of the work that's standout. You'll kind of see something across the room and just get drawn to it immediately. Then there's going to be maybe 4 or 5 paintings that he was short a few. He had to put those in, and then the rest will be good, but not brilliant. You're going to have maybe that 10% of the stuff that's really, really good. Now, the question is, he said, then if the artist really knew what he or she was doing, why didn't they have all of the paintings as good as those 3?
Hmm.
And what it kind of comes down to is sort of what I was saying earlier on. I think that somewhere between kind of technical craft and purely mechanical approach to the work, and mad intuition where you're completely going with the flow. There's an area somewhere in between, and it's a
Yep.
very, very narrow band. But if you're in there and you're in that space, you're going to produce something exceptionally good. But
If
but you're never going to figure out why. But the more you do it, the more likely you are to produce some of those, you know. And I think that's kind of the magic about it, really. That it's like sometimes everything just comes together, you know. There's a certain amount of luck in it, but the more you practice and the more you do of the kind of mundane stuff, the better are your chances of hitting that more often. I think that's really what it comes down to.
I, it's hard for me to agree with that.
Yeah.
Very much so, because um, I look at an artist like or an illustrator like Norman Rockwell, who consistently had to produce winners, you know, and so there is a way. There has to be a way for you to win more often than not, and not just leave it up to chance.
Well,
I
no, no, maybe you misunderstand. I'm not saying. I'm saying if you see an exhibition with
Mhm,
from a painter, let's say they've got 25 paintings in. Okay, there's going to be maybe three or four paintings that will be absolute standout pieces. Okay,
mhm,
there might be another 16, 17 that are really good. I mean, they're good paintings. They're
mhm,
not bad. You could look at them and see they're really put together, well designed, whatever.
mhm.
But there will be a difference between those and the exceptional ones. And
Mhm.
quite often the difference is sort of it's a magic. It's almost like as if something just happened by chance, but it isn't. Of course, it's the reason they've managed to create those exceptionally good paintings is because they can produce the really good ones without too much effort. But the exceptional ones happen every now and again.
Fair enough.
So that's my take on it. Maybe I'm wrong, Victor, but it's sort of the way I see it. I think it's like I go back to something like go back to your professional golfer again. You know, if he didn't set up right to begin with, he wouldn't have a chance of hitting the ball, 300 yards down the fairway.
Yeah,
So mechanics are important, and it's a bit like having a good design in your painting. If the basics are wrong,
absolutely.
certain
And if you're putting a show together and you have that many paintings, and I'm sure um, at some point, you know, you're gonna get some of your great work or your great moments out in one painting. You might have
mm,
eaten something bad and now you're off. You're not as tuned in, or you didn't sleep well, you know. A painting you were working on 3 weeks ago, everything was working, uh, and then 3 weeks later, it's just like, you're being told to take out the trash before you go into the studio, and you carry that in. You know what I'm saying? Like, so there's all kinds of reasons. Uh,
mm,
it's very strange. I, one thing I encourage artists to do when doing a show is not to do one painting, then one painting, then one painting, one painting, right? Like, I encourage them to actually compose and design the entire show first,
mm,
and then work through layers. And what I found from that, um, I discovered that by myself. Like, I worked all these, I created these images for a show years ago, and I put them through this process. And when I hung the show, the entire show was sold out,
right.
right? Like, it, one person bought them all.
Yeah.
And so I was like, whoa, So then my first student a few years ago, we worked on 13 paintings, and it was this beautiful series. And he went into negotiations. Someone saw the show, and he went into negotiations with them um, to buy the entire set, like the entire thing.
Mm,
Um, it, and then, actually, it's funny. One of my students called me today to give them feedback on something. She's in this thing, and our first project together, we worked on 5 paintings, and she sold 3 of them 3 out of the 5, and one of them she sold even before the gallery even opened, and she was part of a group show. So I think there really is like it's a very strange relation. This is what you were saying earlier. I have this belief, like if you draw two circles where they overlap, right?
Mm-hmm.
If one circle you put EQ, like your intuitive emotional intelligence, and then the other one you put your IQ, that would be your academic precision drafting. You know, I always say the art happens when the two overlap.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be 50-50. You have to figure out who you are and what the specific painting is. But you know, you can have incredible skill, but if you don't know how to connect with another human being, then you're screwed, because you'll have really great crafted images that do not connect with people.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
No,
doesn't mean.
I'd agree with that. Yeah, that's pretty much what I'm saying. I think
Yeah.
that sort of space between kind of intuition and logical thought is really where the magic happens, you know.
But then it comes down to knowledge. You have to know the technical, and you have to know thyself. And I don't think I think a lot of technical artists don't know who the hell they are.
Yeah.
Right. And so they're missing that. And then you have another group who are very intuitive and they're very in touch with themselves, but then they didn't invest the time to actually master their craft. And so I think there's you know, you might put 20 years into mastering the craft and 20 years into mastering yourself, you know. And then finally you're at a point, you know, I mean, you look at a Monet. And Monet, you know, he was a painter, but he didn't. The paintings we think of when we think of Monet, he was producing when he was 80, you know, and there are only like 24 of them. It wasn't like he has hundreds of paintings that we know of, right? So I think there's a point where, you know, now Renoir, on the other hand, Renoir was extremely successful, but he made a very conscious decision where he wanted to become more impressionist.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he was like, I still got to make a living, right? And so he kept a lot of the classic training.
Yeah.
And, you know, and he didn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And he had this really nice blend. So he figured out a formula for himself that worked. And he became very, very wealthy in his lifetime, selling his work. So I think what you're saying is spot on in terms of what needs to happen. And I think that can be something that's far more conscious, that people can be more conscious and control of than relying on, you know, luck or it just happening.
Yeah. But I've given the advice to a lot of people over the years that, you know, I think no matter what you do, ultimately, certainly when it comes to art and painting, you have to be true to yourself. You know, there's no point in doing something because you feel the market is heading that way or is fashionable at the moment or whatever.
Absolutely.
I see a lot of young painters now here are producing stuff that's sort of very kind of monotone, you know, just sort of almost sort of black and grey and white, because it's like a decor thing, you know. It's sort of, that's what people are buying to match the curtains and the carpets and whatever else is going to the modern home, you know. And they're chasing the market that's there at the moment, but like they're probably, I would say, deeply unhappy people because they're not doing something they want to do. I would
agree.
I think if you do what your heart tells you want to do, you would probably produce your best work, and people will see it.
But that's scary. That's super, super scary, right? I mean, because if you do what your heart's telling you to do, then most likely a couple things will happen. You're going to get people who love your work. You get people who hate your work.
Yeah.
You know, you're also going to have to pay your dues and go through the time of actually figuring out what is it that your heart actually wants. And that could take a decade. It could take 2 decades to finally come to the place where you actually have the courage to speak your truth.
But the other thing, Victor, is that truth actually changes as you get older.
Does it?
All you got to do, you mentioned Monet. I mean, the interesting thing about Claude Monet is from the time he was my age to what he was doing before he lost his eyesight, there was a huge change in the subject matter and in the way he actually went about applying the paint.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he painted the ones he mentioned, I mean, these very, very large, semi-abstract canvases of water lilies.
Mm-hmm.
They're very, very different to, say, the Haystack series that would have been done when he was probably in the 60s. So his own sort of what was driving him as a painter had changed somewhat as he got older. And I think that's just a natural progression in life. But I mean, it's really as long as you actually, I think, as long as you do what your own heart tells you is right for you. Okay, you may not enjoy commercial success, but you'll probably be happier.
Mm-hmm.
That's personal view. I mean, I it's probably my own background. I mean, look, I'm not painting to make money from it. If I wanted to make money, I'd still be working. I'd still have the day job, and so that's not the motivation. It's something deeper than that. And I think no matter what sort of genre you're in, whether you're an abstract painter or you're somebody who's a little bit more maybe representational like me,
Mm-hmm.
you've got to kind of stick with what you feel is right.
Indeed. I would encourage artists and even yourself, Michael, to ask yourself this question: what is the story that you want to be left? The story that you want to tell? And your paintings are merely just we have an incredible blessing in the fact that we get to share our story visually. Other people do it through music, other people do it through writing, other people do it through business, other people just do it by raising an incredible family or being an incredible person. All of these are modes and mediums. We get to do it, and in your case, you get to do it through paint. And the painting itself is not not the end goal. It's just a vehicle. And there's something very magical in this painting that you have, The New Dawn. But it doesn't quote unquote tell a story, but it puts us into a mood, into a trance, and it brings us into a story. And I think a lot of your paintings really bring us into, it's weird. When I look at your paintings, I feel like I'm right about to see the end of the rainbow and the leprechaun and and I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but like it's like right on the cusp of like I'm in reality, but I'm right on the cusp of turning into this moment of realizing that the fantasy is real, right? Yeah. There's a moment like that magic is right about to occur, and I'm starting to feel the warmth of its coming into this presence, and that's it's cool. It's such a neat feeling. Like you're that close. You're not in it. It's not fantasy. It's not magic, magical in that way. But it's like the presence of magic is right in front of your face, and it's just about to open up. And
I suppose, I mean, another way is that to some extent, like, okay, as a a painter that tends to be representational, whatever that might mean. I'm obviously influenced by what I'm looking at, but I think for any artist, certainly the more experience you get, like the painting, I've said to people sometimes that if you're painting outside, the painting probably should be kind of 50% what's in front of your eyes, and the other 50% is what's behind them.
Nice.
By which I mean that a certain amount of yourself has to be in a painting.
Indeed.
In fact, it's inevitable. It's going to happen anyway, whether you like it or not. Just your own kind of signature, not just the way you apply the paint, but even your own preference in terms of what excites you as a subject matter. And I think for that reason, as you get more mature as a painter, I think increasingly the paintings become more about yourself really than the subject matter becomes less important. I would say that's what happened with Monet. I think his work just became, at first sight it can just appear repetitive. What was the guy doing? Going out painting lilies every morning, from his garden. But of course, they're not. They're not really paintings about lilies at all. They're quite different.
No, I think if you want to die a happy artist, and I'll say happy artist, or die, and I, it's weird. I know I talk a lot about death, but I think you have to start there, or you'll never really live.
Yeah.
And so the question in the end is, when you look at life and say, oh, death is so far away, I have all the possibilities in the world, then you do nothing. But if you start at the end and you're saying, okay, crap, like here I am, what is it?
Yeah.
Because all your life is going to be our moments and memories. It's not going to be like a narrative, right? It's just going to be these little moments. We honor Monet because he had a moment of 24 canvases, right? So when we look back at that, and I think ultimately the formula, if anyone's looking for a formula on how to win, and I'm not talking about commercially. I mean, like you look at your life and you're like, I can go rest now and die. And what I've left was a legacy through my artwork, through the relationships that I had, whatever it is. And I think the key to it is, and this is going to sound hokey, but it really is the key to it. You have to come to a place where you love yourself and you're able to articulate why. And when you do, then you have a resource, and then all your paintings become this place, a place to express why you love yourself. Yeah, like I'll just leave it at that.
Well, okay, that could probably be interpreted a number of ways.
Sure.
Not in a narcissistic way, obviously, but I think maybe just being comfortable in your own skin.
That's loving yourself.
Yeah, it's just like you know who you are, you know what you are, and what you're really trying to do in life. That sort of. I think I'm already in that space. I mean, I'm of an age where I know I'm not a young fella. Life ain't going to go on indefinitely, and one of the things that ran by me on your questionnaire was what would I want to be doing in 10 years' time? I hope I'm still here. Nothing more than that. That would be at this stage. That's all I want. I think we're just blessed that we're able to do as artists, and we're able to do what we do. And I'm incredibly lucky that I have a group of other similarly minded people around me. As I said earlier on, it's quite an arty place down here. Did I mention that we have a major plein air festival here? We've had this thing running down here for the last 10 years. Art in the Open, it's called. Art in the Open, and we've had I was on the organising committee of it initially for a couple of years, and it's become a big gig. We're getting a lot of American artists, about 30 or 40 American artists here last year. But Wexford itself is kind of getting a reputation as a place that artists come to, so it's good because it's kind of all, it helps, you get that sort of environment around you, and a lot of similar kind of like-minded people, but each with sort of slightly different sort of leanings towards what they want to do, but we learn off each other, And I just sort of leave you with that thought. I think I wrote it down somewhere that I learned something actually very important from. He was a life coach. That in my old days, one of my jobs was to help and encourage senior business managers to go out and start their own companies. Trying to get startup companies. And we had a motivational speaker used to do some pep talks for us. So we bring bunch of people in and, kind of tell them, you take the plunge, whatever. But one thing he said that really resonated with me and it stuck with me ever since. He said one thing you have to remember. He said not just in business, he said, but in life is that anybody can be your teacher.
Mm.
So by that he meant, have an open mind. If you're looking at somebody else, you think, oh, that guy doesn't know anything about my job or my business or my painting. But if you keep an open mind, you will find very often you learn stuff from people that you least expect to learn anything from. So he said, bear in mind anybody can be your teacher. And then the final bit of advice was, don't let your ego get in the way.
Mm.
A healthy dose of humility, I think, is good for anybody.
Indeed.
You have to have a certain amount of self-belief, obviously, or you'd never do what we do. But if you don't have a healthy level of humility, you'll never learn anything either. And I think I have actually learned an awful lot from people who do very, very different sort of artwork than what I do.
Mm-hmm.
Just in terms of ideas. More
Yeah.
than so that I would certainly give that advice to any young painter. Just don't get too set in your ways. Be open. Keep an open mind.
Yeah, the ego is a strange thing. It's on the surface you like, oh, it's here to help me and protect me, and it's so weird how so often it actually restricts you and holds you back, if not almost always. And it's a constant a battle. And I think the humility, and I also think trust, like trusting the process, trusting others, trusting yourself, like just.
I think part of it is just it's age related too. I think as you get older, you get a little bit more confident in what you do, and you kind of you start to know when something is nonsense. You get a nose for stuff like that as you get older. And in some ways you probably become less critical as well because people are learning and you give people a little bit of space. But you certainly you sort of know when something is right or wrong. I think as you get older, it's just years of experience. So I think for a young person, quite often maybe the problem a lot of younger artists have actually is that it's either that they lack confidence or maybe they're too much, young people tend to be quite impetuous, they tend quite often, we've all been there, we've all been young and impetuous and thought we knew everything. And of course, most of us know very little really,
Indeed.
So, but it's always worth keeping an open mind and looking around you in this world. You'll always find something. Every new day, there's something to learn, And the thing is not to be too closed to sort of, I suppose, broadening your horizons a little bit every now and again. I like to actually push myself a little bit. You'll see on the website, Victor. I mean, a lot of what I have there at first sight looks like landscape work, but I have a lot of stuff that I dabble with that never sees the light of day, and maybe someday they will. But I'm always trying new stuff, experimenting, and I think that's good for anybody. I think that there's the worst thing that can happen to you as a painter is to become kind of sort of boxed into a corner where you're sort of known as being the great landscape painter or the great portrait painter, because that's all you'll ever be if that happens. And some people would say that's great, you've got commercial success, you're making a living out of being a painter, but it may well mean that you never realize your full potential.
Yeah. Well, it comes back to that loving yourself, because now all of a sudden, like, people look at you and they see one dimension of you and they say, oh, you're the landscape painter. And now you have to live up to other people's image of you.
Yeah.
And it's not you.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. And it's almost as if in a weird way, it's now you're being trained to hate yourself, because if you don't do what they want, which isn't you,
Yeah,
then you're not validated. And yet
I've
all
seen,
your, it's a,
I've actually seen that happen to a lot of artists over the years, and it just destroyed them.
yeah,
They had a run of success with a gallery for a particular style of painting, and all the gallery wants is more of that,
yep,
more.
more.
We don't like to do stuff that won't sell. And of course, what happens is that the artists ultimately just get bored with what they're doing, and
Yeah,
like everything, eventually the people that like their artwork will stop buying it after a while, and then they haven't developed or
yep,
haven't branched into something new. So it can be a bit of a double-edged sword. Like commercial success can be good on one hand, but it can also, depending on how it comes, your direction, it can actually be a hindrance as well.
indeed, indeed. Um, so I got a question for you.
Yeah,
If myself and a bunch of artists jumped on a plane and flew over to Ireland, see, I did it in my Irish accent, Ireland, and we got there, and we went over to one of those big cliffs, and
yeah,
we looked over this gorgeous water in this magical sunlight that's hitting these greens, and we looked down, and there's this big long table with a beautiful white cloth on it,
yeah.
and we all come to sit down, and magically food appears on that table. Michael, what are we going to be eating that day?
Well, let's say now. Let me think. If we were down near those lovely cliffs that I painted near Fettered on Sea, Ballybun Head, on Island Bay, I think it would have to be lovely fresh seafood.
Ooh, that sounds perfect. Uh huh.
When you stand on the cliff top, just there at Carnarvon, and the smell of the ocean when it's absolutely clean, it's sweet. You get that sweet smell of like ozone. And then when you get a plate of fresh mussels or langoustine
Ooh,
or lobster, and you get that same smell, except it's now going to be more intense because it's cooked and it's hot. It's very, very hard to beat fresh seafood, and
aye.
we actually have it in abundance here.
Wow. You've
So
now officially made me want to get to Ireland
that's what it would
soon.
have. That's what it would have to be. What's more, you can get it in small pubs and places where it's served very, very simply. The worst thing you can do with fresh seafood is to over chef it. People
Overcook
fresh
it.
seafood needs very, very little. One of my favorite things to cook actually is fresh hake. You know what hake is? I don't know if you get that stateside or
Egg.
not. Hake, Hake.
Oh, isn't that like the inside of a goat stomach or something?
No, no. It's a fish. It's like cod. Cod.
Oh, okay.
But
Yeah.
it's actually, if you look at it, it's quite a long fish, and the flesh is more firm, but it tends to be quite reasonably priced. It's much cheaper than cod, and
Mm.
cod can be quite difficult to get at the moment because it's been overfished anyway. But you get a little bit of get a nice steak-sized piece of hake, a little bit of flour, egg, and breadcrumbs.
Mm.
Put it on a frying pan for about 3 minutes each side. That's all it needs.
Mm.
It's going to be absolutely delicious.
Oh,
But
yeah.
it has to be fresh. Uh, by fresh, not bought in the supermarket.
I
Looking
pulled
at the
out of
best.
the ocean.
You need to have it within, I would say, 36 hours of coming out of the sea.
Mm.
If it's 2 days or more, I mean, it'll be good. It'll be fine. It'll be fresh enough to eat. Won't do any harm for 4 or 5 days if it's kept in the refrigerator. But to get that real sweetness, you need it. You need to have it within a day and a half of it
Mm.
coming out of the sea. And you get that if you were if you're down in South Wexford.
Nice.
That or a plate of fresh mussels. Mussels can be
Oh my
beautiful.
gosh, mussels would be amazing.
You're getting hungry.
Yeah, when I was in Portugal, we ate a lot of seafood, and I was so surprised. Like, I think it was like two euros or something. Like, you got like this incredible amount of mussels, Like
Yeah.
in the United States, it costs you like $2 for one mussel, right?
Portugal is actually very, very cheap. My brother lives there. He's retired out there. He's
Oh, really? Nice,
been
nice.
for the last 2 years, and like we were out there actually in February just on a visit.
Really? What part of where does he live?
Near Faro, the Algarve, that area.
Oh, yeah. Algarve. I was supposed to. My friend's getting married there in 3 days. She lives down
Oh,
in
really?
Algarve. Yeah, in,
No,
Abu Dhabi.
the seafood is lot, but there is a difference, Victor. There's actually what you're actually getting there. It's warm Atlantic fish. You know that there's a
Mm,
difference. If you get mussels or shellfish or clams or something
mm-hmm.
from warm water, warm Atlantic water, they're not as sweet. That there's a different flavor. It's
Hmm.
almost sort of a oily kind of more flavor,
Interesting.
like sardines. There's a little
Yeah.
bit more. But the colder the water is, the sweeter shellfish, especially like things like crab and that, it's a completely different flavor. So it's still fresh seafood, but believe me, it's got to be Ireland or Scotland or Iceland.
Or
That's
Iceland. Okay.
that's anything in cold North Atlantic water, and it's going to taste much much better.
Nice.
If you ever do come to Ireland, that's what you got to have: fresh
Okay.
seafood and
I'm.
and a pint of Guinness with it.
I was gonna say, what are we drinking?
And it's got to be Guinness. Got to be Guinness, not white wine.
Okay, no white wine. No
No,
white
no,
wine
no.
in the sun. Although that's my favorite, probably one of my favorite Christmas songs. White wine in the sun.
Well, there you go.
um, it's really weird. Like, just on a side note, uh, hey, I actually may be Irish. Uh, give me 1 second here. Um, the it's weird because he's like this comedian singer,
Yeah.
and he's like this atheist, and he's just like, but he end up writing this almost this atheist version of a Christmas song, but it just turned out like the way he sings it is so beautiful, and even the the uh the sentiment of it is just so beautiful, and
What is
and
this?
it's called White Wine in the Sun. Let me see. Let me find his name. I always forget. White Wine in the Sun. And it's really just about him spending time with his family. White Wine in the Sun by Tim
Yeah.
Minchin. And he's funny and he's talented. But I'll send you the link. You can listen to it. He's like, I really like Christmas. It's just this beautiful Christmas song. But it's just cool. But yeah, Guinness, mussels, white tablecloth, long table on the cliffs in Ireland, looking over the
If
ocean
it's
would be
sunny,
gorgeous.
yes, but if it's a cold day,
Then we have
oh,
fire.
we have to have chowder.
Oh, chowder. What mussel chowder?
Seafood chowder. It's like soup,
Ooh,
thick
yeah, yeah,
soup.
yeah. Like a creamy soup.
You had mixed fish in it, maybe some smoked fish as well, and a few mussels, and maybe bits and pieces in there to give it like cockles maybe or something as well.
Sounds nice.
And then you have brown bread with loads of fresh butter and
Oh,
and Guinness with that, and you're in heaven.
Guinness with
It's
everything.
in a nice pub with a big warm fire blazing.
Yes,
So that's the other
we're
side of
doing
it.
this. We're doing this, Michael. We're doing this.
You have to.
Um,
But come
I
here, check out Art in the Open. It's
yeah,
that's the event we have every year here at the end of July.
nice.
You just see what it's become a big gig. It's like I know there are a lot of similar events around the states, but the difference is this one, like a lot of the events in America, tend to be by invitation only.
Mm,
They tend to maybe invite 30 or 40 artists, but this is sort of an open event.
mm,
Anyone can participate. So, you get everything from sort of very well-known international plein air painters to amateurs taking part in it.
mm-hmm.
And it's like most things in Ireland, it's 50% about the competition, but it's also 50% about having fun, you know.
Yeah,
And
exactly. That's
so
what. Yeah.
we've made loads of friends through it over the year. I mean, I've met friends in America and in Germany. You see it somewhere, I think, on my website. I spent I've been to Germany 2 or 3 times to paint at an event over there
Nice.
in a very, very rural area north of Berlin. But I've been in the old GDR, the old East German Republic, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Very quite surprising because I would have travelled to Germany quite a lot in my job in the old days, but would have been to the industrial area around Cologne and you know that area. But this part of Germany is just so unspoiled, you know. But it was an interesting experience. I mean, I painted with Dutch painters, German, French painters.
I guess Germany is serious about the arts, and I was researching.
Certainly Berlin, very much so. I mean,
Yeah.
this place was only about 50 miles north of Berlin, and I mean, you could have been 1,000 miles away from Berlin. It's so different, you know.
Wow.
But I mean, we got to do stuff like that just purely because of our festival. That's how we got to meet these people.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's kind of opened up a whole new world for us. It's been fantastic, you know.
I met a lady who lives on the ocean, named Nancy, and she has a good friend who lives in Canada, and she's an artist as well.
Yeah.
And Nancy's an artist, and her husband is an artist. And her friend in Canada travels every year with a group of artists to Algarve for 4 months, 3 to 4 months, and they guess they have a little artist community there, and I'd love to go check that out. But that might be something, you know, when you're visiting your brother, you might, you know, meet up with them.
Where my brother lives, there is an a small art school there actually, run by an English lady.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, and there'd be an expat community there, you know, a lot of people.
Yeah.
Would sort of come out there and retire there, you know. So it's
yeah. My friend who's getting married in 3 days, she's an artist. She's from Dubai in India, and she's really not really good, and so that's really cool. Well, Michael, how can people get in contact with you?
Well, I suppose the easiest way is with the website, and website is www.michealmcguireart.com. That's McGuire spelled McGuire. And on that, I tend to update the website, probably not as often as I should. Usually about every quarter, I would, you know, just update it a little bit. But the current stuff is on my Facebook page. And the way to find the Facebook page is to just get on the website and click the link on the website. I have a public page, just Micheal McGuire on Facebook, and I tend to use Facebook almost like a blog. You know, I just, whatever I do day by day goes up there, you know, so it's more current, you know. So cool. That's it. So on the website, actually, my phone number and everything is on that if anybody wants to ring me, you know, so you can either email or contact me by phone.
Awesome. And then we'll put that in the show notes and have that for the people. So it was great chatting with you. And we're going to stay in touch, and we're going to get some mussels and Guinness and some chowder, seafood chowder.
I guarantee you, if you came to Ireland and you bring a group of friends with you, whatever else, you'll have a good time.
Awesome. Sounds awesome.
You're guaranteed a good time, not the weather.
You don't guarantee the weather.
Guarantee a bit of fun.
Nice.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, Mike. Be well. Thank you.
Great talking to you, and thanks very much.
Yep. No problem.
Okay.
Bye. In just 30 days, the Core 80 experience teaches you to decode the intentional design underneath great masterpieces. Through video lessons, assignments, and feedback, you learn to recognize the underlining structures like thrust maps, echoes, and gamuts that give master compositions substance and gravitas. Knowing how master artists and illustrators compose their artwork unlocks your ability to give your artwork more meaning and energy. Enroll today and get a 7-day no-hassle money-back guarantee at core80.com.